What if I had taken that job? What if I had said sorry? What if I had been braver when opportunity knocked? These thoughts that haunt us in quiet moments are called regrets. For decades, we've been told regret is negative, something to avoid, something that holds us back. But what if everything we've been told about regret is completely wrong? Today's book, The Power of Regret, by Daniel H. Pink, revolutionizes how we think about this emotion. Pink researched over 16,000 regrets and discovered something remarkable. Regret isn't your enemy, it's your most powerful teacher. He found that all human regrets fall into just 4 core categories. When you understand these categories, you can transform your regrets from sources of pain into sources of power. You can make better decisions, perform better in life, and create greater meaning. This video will completely change how you view your past mistakes and future choices. By the end, you'll know how to harness the power of regret to create the life you truly want. Chapter 1. Understanding Regret, the Science of Looking Back. What exactly is regret? Regret is one of the most misunderstood emotions in the human experience. Most people think it's purely negative, something that weighs us down and prevents us from moving forward. But science tells us a completely different story. At its core, regret is a comparison. It's the mental process where we compare what actually happened with what could have happened if we had made different choices. This comparison isn't random or meaningless. It's actually our brain's sophisticated way of learning from experience and preparing us for future decisions. Think about this for a moment. Regret is uniquely human. While animals can feel disappointment when something doesn't go their way, only humans have the cognitive capacity to imagine alternative scenarios, to think about what might have been, and to use that information to guide future behavior. The neuroscience behind regret. When neuroscientists study regret using brain imaging technology, they discover something fascinating. Regret activates multiple regions of the brain simultaneously. The orbitofrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making and planning, lights up. The anterior cingulate cortex, which processes emotions and helps us learn from mistakes, becomes active. The striatum, which is involved in reward processing and motivation, also engages. This isn't the pattern you see with purely negative emotions like fear or anger. Instead, it's the pattern of a learning emotion, an emotion designed to help us grow and improve. Your brain is literally wired to use regret as a teaching tool. The 3 functions of regret. Daniel Pink's research reveals that regret serves 3 critical functions in human life, and understanding these functions helps us appreciate why this emotion exists in the first place. The first function is sense-making. Regret helps us understand what went wrong and why. It's like having a detective in your mind that investigates your past decisions, looking for clues about what led to outcomes you didn't want. This analysis isn't meant to torture you, it's meant to educate you. Consider Sarah, who regrets not studying abroad in college. Her regret doesn't just make her feel bad about the past. It helps her understand that she was too risk-averse, too focused on staying in her comfort zone. This understanding is valuable information she can use going forward. The second function is agency. Regret reinforces our sense that we have control over our lives and our choices. When we regret a decision, we're acknowledging that we could have chosen differently. This acknowledgement is actually empowering because it reminds us that we have the power to make different choices in the future. If we never felt regret, we might fall into fatalism, believing that our outcomes are predetermined and that our choices don't matter. Regret keeps us engaged as active participants in our own lives. The third function is sociality. Regret helps us connect with others and maintain our relationships. Many of our deepest regrets involve other people, times when we hurt someone or failed to show up for them. These regrets motivate us to repair relationships, to apologize, to do better next time. Without regret, we would be less motivated to maintain the social bonds that are essential to human well-being and survival. Why we've gotten regret wrong. The reason we've misunderstood regret for so long is that we've confused regret with rumination. Rumination is the endless, unproductive cycling through past events without learning or moving forward. It's getting stuck in, why did this happen to me, without ever progressing to, what can I learn from this? Regret, when properly understood and managed, is different. It's looking back not to get stuck, but to get smart. It's using the past as a teacher, not as a prison. Research shows that people who can reflect on their regrets without getting trapped by them make better decisions, have better relationships, and report higher life satisfaction than people who either suppress their regrets or get consumed by them. The universality of regret. One of the most important findings in Pink's research is just how universal regret is. Across cultures, ages, and backgrounds, humans experience regret in remarkably similar ways. The specific content of our regrets might differ based on our circumstances, but the underlying patterns are consistent. This universality tells us something important. Regret isn't a flaw in human psychology that needs to be fixed. It's a feature, an evolved capacity that serves important functions in helping us navigate complex social environments and make better decisions over time. When you understand regret this way, you stop trying to eliminate it from your life and start learning how to work with it more effectively. Chapter 2. The 4 Core Regrets. Foundation Regrets. Building your life platform. After analyzing thousands of regrets from people around the world, Daniel Pink discovered that nearly all regrets fall into 4 core categories. The first and most fundamental are foundation regrets. Foundation regrets arise when we fail to be responsible, conscientious, or prudent. They're about the times we didn't do the work necessary to build a stable platform for our lives. These regrets typically cluster around 3 key areas: education, health, and finance. Let's start with education regrets. These are incredibly common, especially among people who had opportunities to learn but didn't take full advantage of them. The regret isn't usually about not being smart enough. It's about not being disciplined enough, not being focused enough, not taking education seriously enough when we had the chance. Take Michael's story. He was a bright student in high school but was more interested in hanging out with friends than studying. He barely graduated and never went to college. Now, at 35, he's stuck in dead-end jobs while watching his former classmates advance in their careers. His regret isn't about not being intelligent. It's about not building the educational foundation that would have opened more doors. Health regrets follow a similar pattern. These are regrets about not taking care of our bodies when we were younger, not establishing healthy habits, not addressing problems before they became serious. The 60-year-old who regrets not exercising in his 30s, the 50-year-old who regrets smoking for 20 years, the 40-year-old who regrets ignoring her mental health during stressful periods. What makes health regrets particularly painful is that, unlike some other regrets, the consequences often can't be completely undone. You can go back to school at any age, but you can't undo decades of poor health choices as easily. Financial regrets are about not saving enough, not investing wisely, not living within our means, or not taking advantage of compound interest when we were young. These regrets become more acute as people approach retirement and realize they're not financially prepared for the future they want. The underlying theme of all foundation regrets is the same. If only I had been more responsible, more disciplined, more focused on building a stable base for my life. These regrets teach us that while being spontaneous and living in the moment has its place, neglecting the basics of adult responsibility creates problems that compound over time. The good news about foundation regrets is that they're often the most actionable. While you can't go back and change the past, you can almost always start building better foundations today. You can go back to school, start exercising, begin saving money. Foundation regrets are essentially your future self, sending you a message about what needs attention now. Boldness regrets. The chances not taken. The second category of core regrets are boldness regrets, and they follow a clear pattern. If only I had taken that risk. These are regrets about playing it too safe, about choosing security over possibility, about letting fear make our decisions for us. Boldness regrets are fascinating because they reveal something important about human psychology. While foundation regrets are about failing to be responsible enough, Boldness regrets are about being too responsible, too cautious, too afraid to step outside our comfort zones. Career boldness regrets are extremely common. These are the regrets about not starting that business, not taking that job in another city, not making that career change when you were younger and had fewer obligations. They're about watching opportunities pass by because the timing never seemed quite right, or the risk seemed
Jennifer's
too
story
great. Illustrates this perfectly. 10 years ago, she had the opportunity to join a startup in Silicon Valley. The salary was lower than her corporate job. The future was uncertain, and it meant leaving her comfortable life in Ohio. She chose security over adventure. That startup is now worth billions, and while Jennifer has a stable career, she can't stop thinking about what might have been. Travel and adventure regrets are another common form of boldness regret. These are the regrets about not seeing the world when you were young and unencumbered, not taking that trip to Europe, not spending a year abroad, not going on adventures when your body was younger and your responsibilities were fewer. What's particularly interesting about boldness regrets is how they change over time. Research shows that as people get older, boldness regrets become more prominent while foundation regrets become less so. This makes psychological sense. When you're young, you're still building your foundation, so foundation regrets feel urgent. But as you age and your foundation becomes more stable, you start to regret the chances you didn't take. Older adults consistently report that their biggest regrets are about things they didn't do rather than things they did do. They regret the trips not taken, the risks not assumed, the dreams not pursued. This pattern is so consistent that it's become known as the regret of inaction phenomenon. The message of boldness regrets is clear but nuanced. It's not that you should throw caution to the wind and take every risk that comes your way. That would lead to foundation regrets. Instead, it's about taking sensible risks, calculated chances that could lead to growth and new opportunities. Boldness regrets teach us that security is important, but security alone is not enough for a fulfilling life. We also need growth, challenge, and the occasional leap into the unknown. The key is finding the right balance between being responsible enough to build a stable foundation and being bold enough to pursue opportunities for growth and adventure. Moral regrets. Compromising your values. The third category of core regrets are moral regrets, and they follow the pattern. If only I had done the right thing. These are regrets about times when we compromised our values, acted against our principles, or failed to stand up for what we believed in. Moral regrets are often the most painful type of regret because they strike at the core of our identity. When we act against our values, we damage not just our external circumstances, but our internal sense of who we are. These regrets make us question our character and our integrity. Workplace moral regrets are incredibly common. These are situations where people compromise their ethics for career advancement, stay silent when they should speak up about wrongdoing, or participate in practices they know are harmful. The pressure to succeed, to fit in, or to avoid conflict can lead us to make choices that haunt us later. Consider David's experience. He was working for a company that he discovered was systematically overcharging elderly customers. He knew it was wrong, but he was up for a promotion and didn't want to rock the boat. He stayed silent for months while the practice continued. Eventually, the fraud was exposed by someone else, and the company faced massive lawsuits. David kept his job, but he never forgot that he had chosen personal advancement over doing what was right. Family moral regrets often involve failing to stand up for family members, not being present during important moments, or prioritizing work over relationships in ways that violated our deeper values about what matters most in life. Personal integrity regrets can involve smaller, but still significant compromises, lying to avoid consequences, taking credit for someone else's work, breaking promises, or betraying confidences. These might seem minor in the moment, but they can create lasting regret because they represent times when we failed to be the person we want to be. What makes moral regrets particularly complex is that they often involve situations where doing the right thing came with real costs. It's easy to be moral when morality is convenient. The test comes when doing the right thing requires sacrifice, courage, or standing alone against pressure from others. Research shows that moral regrets tend to be more intense and longer-lasting than other types of regrets. This makes sense because moral regrets don't just represent poor outcomes. They represent threats to our self-concept and our sense of being a good person. The positive side of moral regrets is that they can serve as powerful motivators for future behavior. People who have experienced moral regret often become more committed to their values, more willing to stand up for what they believe in, and more conscious of the ethical dimensions of their choices. Moral regrets teach us that our integrity is not something we can compromise without consequences. They remind us that who we are matters more than what we achieve, and that the respect we have for ourselves depends on living in alignment with our deepest values. Connection regrets, the relationships we neglected. The fourth and largest category of core regrets are connection regrets. Following the pattern, if only I had reached out. These are regrets about relationships, the ones we didn't nurture, the ones we let drift away, the ones we failed to repair when there was still time. Connection regrets are the most common type of regret in Pink's research, and they reveal something fundamental about human nature. We are social beings, and our relationships are central to our well-being and our sense of meaning in life. Family connection regrets often involve relationships with parents, siblings, or extended family members that deteriorated due to misunderstandings, conflicts, or simple neglect. These regrets become particularly acute when death makes reconciliation impossible. Mark's story illustrates this painfully. He and his father had a falling out over Mark's career choices when he was 25. Both men were proud and stubborn, and neither wanted to be the first to reach out. They went years without speaking, each waiting for the other to make the first move. When Mark's father died suddenly of a heart attack, Mark's overwhelming regret wasn't about anything his father had done, but about all the years they had lost due to his own pride and unwillingness to reach out. Friendship connection regrets involve old friends we lost touch with, people who were once important to us, but drifted away as life got busy. These regrets often surface during major life transitions, or when we see old friends on social media and realize how much we miss what we once had. Romantic connection regrets can involve relationships that ended badly without proper closure, feelings that were never expressed, or apologies that were never offered. These regrets remind us that love requires courage, the courage to be vulnerable, to forgive, to reach across the divide that separates us from others. What's particularly striking about connection regrets is how often they involve relatively small actions that could have made a big difference. Most connection regrets aren't about grand gestures, but about simple acts of reaching out, making a phone call, sending a text, showing up at an important event, or simply saying, "I'm sorry," or "I love you." The research on connection regrets reveals something important about human psychology. We tend to overestimate how awkward or difficult it will be to reach out to someone, and we underestimate how much the other person might want to hear from us. This asymmetry leads us to hesitate when we should act, to wait for the right moment that never comes. Connection regrets also reveal the central importance of relationships in human life. As people age and reflect on their lives, they rarely regret not spending more time at the office or not making more money. They regret not investing more in their relationships, not being present for the people who mattered most, not expressing love and appreciation while they had the chance. The message of connection regrets is both simple and profound. Reach out. Don't let pride, fear, or the assumption that it's too late prevent you from connecting with people who matter to you. The worst thing that can happen is that your gesture isn't reciprocated. The best thing that can happen is that you repair or strengthen a relationship that adds meaning to your life. Chapter 3, Transforming Regret into Power. The 3 strategies for harnessing regret. Now that we understand the 4 core regrets, The crucial question becomes, how do we transform these painful emotions into positive force for change in our lives? Daniel Pink's research reveals 3 evidence-based strategies that can help us convert regret from a source of suffering into a source of wisdom and motivation. The first strategy is self-disclosure, the act of revealing and sharing our regrets rather than keeping them buried inside. The second is self-compassion, treating ourselves with kindness rather than harsh judgment when we reflect on our mistakes. The third is self-distance, gaining psychological perspective on our regrets so we can learn from them without being overwhelmed by them. These 3 strategies work together to create what Pink calls regret optimization, the ability to extract maximum learning and growth from our regrets, while minimizing their capacity to cause ongoing psychological harm. When we master these strategies, our regrets become allies rather than enemies in our quest for a better life. 1. Self-disclosure, the healing power of sharing. Self-disclosure means sharing your regrets with others or expressing them through writing. This might seem counterintuitive. Why would talking about painful experiences make them less painful? But extensive research in psychology shows that expressing our emotions, particularly difficult ones, has profound benefits for our mental and physical health. When we keep regrets bottled up inside, they tend to grow larger and more distorted in our minds. The regret becomes not just about what happened, but about the fact that we're carrying this secret burden. Sharing the regret breaks this cycle by bringing it into the light where it can be examined more objectively. There are several ways to practice self-disclosure with regrets. You can share them with trusted friends or family members who can offer perspective and support. You can work with a therapist or counselor who can help you process complex emotions. You can join support groups where others share similar experiences. Writing about regrets can be particularly powerful. Research shows that people who write about traumatic or difficult experiences for just 15 to 20 minutes a day for several days experience improvements in immune function, reductions in depression and anxiety, and better problem-solving abilities. The key to effective self-disclosure is choosing the right audience and the right format. Share with people who can listen without judgment and offer constructive perspective. If you're writing, be honest about your feelings, but also look for lessons and insights you can extract from the experience. One important caveat: self-disclosure works best when it leads to sense-making and growth, not when it becomes repetitive venting or rumination. The goal is not to endlessly rehash the past, but to process the experience in a way that helps you move forward. Strategy 2. Self-compassion. Treating yourself like a friend. Self-compassion is perhaps the most important skill for dealing with regret effectively. Most of us have a harsh inner critic that becomes especially active when we reflect on our mistakes and failures. This inner critic tells us we're stupid, weak, or fundamentally flawed because we made poor choices in the past. This self-critical approach is not only painful, it's counterproductive. Research by psychologist Kristen Neff and others shows that self-criticism actually makes us less likely to learn from our mistakes and more likely to repeat them. When we're in a state of self-attack, our brains shift into defensive mode, making it harder to think clearly about what went wrong and how to do better. Self-compassion involves treating yourself the way you would treat a good friend who was struggling with similar regrets. If your friend came to you filled with regret about a past decision, you wouldn't attack their character or tell them they were worthless. You would acknowledge their pain, remind them that everyone makes mistakes, and help them figure out how to learn and grow from the experience. Self-compassion has 3 components. First is self-kindness, speaking to yourself with warmth and understanding rather than harsh judgment. Instead of, "I'm such an idiot for making that choice," you might say, "I made a decision that didn't work out, and that's painful." Second is common humanity, recognizing that making mistakes and experiencing regret is part of the shared human experience, not evidence that you're uniquely flawed. Everyone has regrets. Everyone has made decisions they wish they could change. Your regrets don't make you different or defective, they make you human. Third is mindfulness, observing your regret and the emotions around it without getting completely swept away by them. You can acknowledge that you feel regret without letting that regret define your entire sense of self-worth. Research shows that people who practice self-compassion recover more quickly from setbacks, make better decisions under pressure, and show greater resilience in the face of challenges. When it comes to regret specifically, self-compassion allows us to face our past mistakes honestly without being crushed by them. Strategy 3. Self-distance. Gaining perspective on pain. Self-distance is the ability to step back from our regrets and view them from a broader perspective, as if we were outside observers of our own experience. When we're caught up in the immediate emotion of regret, it's hard to think clearly about what happened and what we can learn from it. Self-distance creates the psychological space necessary for wisdom to emerge. There are several techniques for creating self-distance with regret. One powerful approach is temporal distancing, imagining how you'll view this regret from the perspective of your future self. Ask yourself about this regret 10 years from now. Will it still seem as important? What advice would my 80-year-old self give me about this situation? This temporal perspective often reveals that regrets that feel enormous in the present will seem much smaller with the passage of time. It also helps identify which regrets contain important lessons that are worth paying attention to versus which ones are just part of the inevitable messiness of human life. Another technique is psychological distancing, thinking about your regret as if you were advising a friend, or as if you were an outside consultant brought in to analyze the situation objectively. This approach helps you move beyond the emotional intensity of the regret to focus on the practical lessons it contains. You can also use self-distance to put your regret in the broader context of your entire life. Is this regret representative of a larger pattern that needs attention, or is it an isolated incident? How does this regret fit into the larger story of who you are and who you're becoming? Self-distance doesn't mean becoming cold or detached from your emotions. It means creating enough psychological space so that you can learn from your regrets without being overwhelmed by them. When you can view your regrets with some emotional distance, you're much better positioned to extract their wisdom and use them to make better choices going forward. Chapter 4. Using regret for better decision-making. The Regret Optimization Framework. Now that we understand how to process regrets in a healthy way, we can use this understanding to make better decisions in the present and future. The 4 core regrets don't just help us understand our past, they provide a framework for evaluating choices we're facing now. Every major decision you face can be filtered through the lens of the 4 core regrets. Before making an important choice, ask yourself, if I take this path, which of the 4 regrets am I most likely to experience? If I don't take this path, which regrets might I have? For foundation regrets, ask, will this decision help me build a more stable platform for my life, or will it undermine the foundations I need for long-term success and security? This applies to decisions about education, health habits, financial planning, and career development. For boldness regrets, ask, am I being too cautious here? Is fear holding me back from a choice that could lead to significant growth or opportunity? This applies to decisions about career changes, relationships, travel, and pursuing dreams. For moral regrets, ask, is this choice aligned with my deepest values? Will I be able to look back on this decision with pride, or will it compromise my integrity in ways I'll later regret? This applies to any decision where there's an ethical dimension, or where you're feeling pressure to compromise your principles. For connection regrets, ask, how will this decision affect my relationships with the people who matter most to me? Am I prioritizing connections with others, or am I letting other considerations overshadow the importance of maintaining and building relationships? This framework doesn't guarantee you'll never have regrets. That's impossible and not even desirable. But it does help ensure that the regrets you do have will be the result of conscious choices rather than unconscious patterns or fear-based avoidance. Anticipatory regret and future decision-making. One of the most powerful applications of regret research is using anticipatory regret to make better decisions. Anticipatory regret is the regret you expect to feel in the future based on choices you're making now. By imagining your future regrets, you can often identify the choice that will serve you best in the long run. The technique is straightforward but requires honest self-reflection. When facing a significant decision, project yourself forward in time, 5 years, 10 years, or even to the end of your life. From that future perspective, look back at the choice you're considering now. What would your future self regret more? Taking this risk or playing it safe? Making this change or staying with the status quo? Research shows that people who use anticipatory regret in their decision-making process report higher satisfaction with their choices over time. They're more likely to take beneficial risks and less likely to get stuck in situations that don't serve them well. Who was offered a job opportunity that required relocating to another country. The position offered career advancement and adventure, but it meant leaving behind her comfortable life and social network. Using anticipatory regret, she imagined herself at age 60, looking back on this moment. She realized that she would regret not taking the opportunity more than she would regret the challenges of moving abroad. This insight gave her the courage to accept the position, and 5 years later, she considers it one of the best decisions she ever made. The key to using anticipatory regret effectively is to consider all 4 types of regrets. Will you regret not building a stronger foundation? Will you regret not being bold enough? Will you regret compromising your values? Will you regret not prioritizing your relationships? Sometimes these different types of anticipated regrets will point in different directions, and that's when decision-making becomes more complex. But even then, the framework helps you make more conscious, intentional choices rather than simply defaulting to whatever feels easiest or most comfortable in the moment. The balance between foundation and boldness. One of the most interesting tensions in regret research is the balance between foundation regrets and boldness regrets. These 2 types of regrets often pull us in opposite directions. Foundation regrets tell us to be more responsible, more careful, more focused on building stability. Boldness regrets tell us to take more risks, be more adventurous, worry less about security. The key insight is that both types of regrets contain important wisdom, and the healthiest approach is to find ways to honor both, rather than choosing one over the other. This requires what we might call intelligent risk-taking, being bold within a framework of responsibility. For young adults, this might mean building foundational habits and skills while also remaining open to opportunities and experiences that could lead to growth. It's not about choosing between security and adventure, but about finding ways to pursue adventure from a position of relative security. For people in midlife, it might mean taking calculated risks that could lead to greater fulfillment while protecting the foundations they've already built. This could involve career changes, relationship changes, or lifestyle changes that honor the need for growth while not destroying the stability that enables that growth. For older adults, it might mean finding ways to be adventurous and take on new challenges within the constraints of their physical and financial realities. The spirit of boldness can be maintained even when the specific forms of risk-taking need to adapt to changing circumstances. The most successful people seem to be those who can hold both foundation and boldness in creative tension. They build strong foundations that enable them to take intelligent risks. They take risks that help them build even stronger foundations. They understand that security and growth are not opposing forces, but complementary aspects of a life well lived. This balance is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing calibration. At different stages of life and in different circumstances, you might need to lean more heavily toward foundation building or toward bold risk-taking. The regret framework helps you identify which direction needs attention at any given moment. Chapter 5. The Science and Psychology of Regret. How regret develops. Across the lifespan, understanding how regret changes throughout our lives provides crucial insight into human development and can help us make sense of our own evolving relationship with past decisions. Research shows clear patterns in how different types of regrets become more or less prominent as we age. In childhood and adolescence, regret is relatively simple and immediate. Young people might regret not studying for a test or fighting with a friend, but they typically don't engage in the complex, counterfactual thinking that characterizes adult regret. The capacity for sophisticated regret, imagining detailed alternative life paths and their implications, develops gradually throughout adolescence and early adulthood. Young adults, roughly ages 18 to 30, experience primarily foundation regrets. This makes developmental sense because this is the life stage focused on building the platform for adult success. Young adults regret not working harder in school, not developing better habits, not taking their health seriously, or not being more financially responsible. Their regrets are typically about failing to do the groundwork necessary for future success. Adults show a more complex pattern. Foundation regrets remain important, but boldness regrets become increasingly prominent. This is the stage where people often realize that the foundation they built, while important, is not sufficient for a fulfilling life. They begin to regret chances not taken, risks not assumed, and dreams deferred. This is why midlife crises often involve dramatic changes. They're responses to accumulated boldness regrets. Older adults show yet another pattern. Foundation regrets become less prominent, partly because the consequences of early foundation failures have either been addressed or accepted as unchangeable. Boldness regrets remain significant, but the largest category of regret for older adults is connection regrets. As people approach the end of life, they increasingly regret not investing more in relationships, not expressing love more freely, and not prioritizing time with family and friends. This pattern reveals something profound about human development. We begin life focused on building individual competence and success. As we mature, we realize that competence without courage leads to a limited existence. Finally, we discover that neither competence nor courage matters much without connection to others. Cultural and individual differences in regret. While the four core regrets appear to be universal, there are interesting cultural and individual differences in how regret is experienced and expressed. These differences help us understand that while regret is a fundamental human emotion, the way we process and respond to it is shaped by our cultural context and personal characteristics. Individualistic cultures, like those found in the United States and Western Europe, tend to emphasize boldness, regrets, and personal achievement. People in these cultures are more likely to regret not taking individual risks, not pursuing personal goals, or not asserting their independence. The cultural message is that you should make your own path and take responsibility for your own success. Collectivistic cultures, like those found in many Asian and African societies, tend to emphasize connection regrets and moral regrets. People in these cultures are more likely to regret failing in their obligations to family and community, not maintaining important relationships, or acting in ways that brought shame to their group. The cultural message is that individual success means little if it comes at the expense of social harmony and family honor. These cultural patterns aren't absolute, and they're changing as cultures become more interconnected. But they help explain why people from different cultural backgrounds might prioritize different types of decisions and experience different patterns of regret. Individual personality differences also play a role in regret. People high in conscientiousness are more likely to experience foundation regrets. They're sensitive to failures of planning, preparation, and responsibility. People high in openness to experience are more likely to have boldness regrets. They're drawn to novelty and adventure and regret when they play things too safe. People with strong moral identities are more susceptible to moral regrets. They care deeply about acting in accordance with their values and suffer when they fall short. People with high social sensitivity are more prone to connection regrets. They're attuned to relationship dynamics and regret when they fail to maintain important bonds. Understanding your own personality and cultural background can help you predict which types of regrets you're most likely to experience and can guide you in making decisions that align with what you're most likely to value in the long run. The relationship between regret and mental health. The relationship between regret and mental health is complex and depends largely on how regret is processed and managed. Healthy regret processing is associated with better decision-making, stronger relationships, and greater life satisfaction. Unhealthy regret processing can contribute to depression, anxiety, and life paralysis. The key distinction is between regret that leads to learning and growth versus regret that leads to rumination and self-attack. When people can acknowledge their regrets, extract lessons from them, and use those lessons to make better choices going forward, regret becomes a positive force in mental health. But when people get stuck in cycles of self-blame, when they repeatedly replay past events without moving toward resolution or learning, or when they use regret as evidence of their fundamental inadequacy, regret becomes destructive to mental well-being. Research shows that people with depression tend to have more regrets and to process those regrets less effectively. They're more likely to engage in counterfactual thinking that focuses on how much better things could have been, and they're less likely to extract constructive lessons from their regrets. Adults show a more complex pattern. Foundation regrets remain important, but boldness regrets become increasingly prominent. This is the stage where people often realize that the foundation they built, while important, is not sufficient for a fulfilling life. They begin to regret chances not taken, risks not assumed, and dreams deferred. This is why midlife crises often involve dramatic changes. Their responses to accumulated boldness regrets. Older adults show yet another pattern. Foundation regrets become less prominent, partly because the consequences of early foundation failures have either been addressed or accepted as unchangeable. Boldness regrets remain significant, but the largest category of regret for older adults is connection regrets. As people approach the end of life, they increasingly regret not investing more in relationships, not expressing love more freely, and not prioritizing time with family and friends. This pattern reveals something profound about human development. We begin life focused on building individual competence and success. As we mature, we realize that competence without courage leads to a limited existence. Finally, we discover that neither competence nor courage matters much without connection to others. Cultural and individual differences in regret. While the four core regrets appear to be universal, there are interesting cultural and individual differences in how regret is experienced and expressed. These differences help us understand that while regret is a fundamental human emotion, the way we process and respond to it is shaped by our cultural context and personal characteristics. Individualistic cultures, like those found in the United States and Western Europe, tend to emphasize boldness, regrets, and personal achievement. People in these cultures are more likely to regret not taking individual risks, not pursuing personal goals, or not asserting their independence. The cultural message is that you should make your own path and take responsibility for your own success. Collectivistic cultures, like those found in many Asian and African societies, tend to emphasize connection regrets and moral regrets. People in these cultures are more likely to regret failing in their obligations to family and community, not maintaining important relationships, or acting in ways that brought shame to their group. The cultural message is that individual success means little if it comes at the expense of social harmony and family honor. These cultural patterns aren't absolute, and they're changing as cultures become more interconnected. But they help explain why people from different cultural backgrounds might prioritize different types of decisions and experience different patterns of regret. Individual personality differences also play a role in regret. People high in conscientiousness are more likely to experience foundation regrets. They're sensitive to failures of planning, preparation, and responsibility. People high in openness to experience are more likely to have boldness regrets. They're drawn to novelty and adventure and regret when they play things too safe. People with strong moral identities are more susceptible to moral regrets. They care deeply about acting in accordance with their values and suffer when they fall short. People with high social sensitivity are more prone to connection regrets. They're attuned to relationship dynamics and regret when they fail to maintain important bonds. Understanding your own personality and cultural background can help you predict which types of regrets you're most likely to experience and can guide you in making decisions that align with what you're most likely to value in the long run. The relationship between regret and mental health. The relationship between regret and mental health is complex and depends largely on how regret is processed and managed. Healthy regret processing is associated with better decision-making, stronger relationships, and greater life satisfaction. Unhealthy regret processing can contribute to depression, anxiety, and life paralysis. The key distinction is between regret that leads to learning and growth versus regret that leads to rumination and self-attack. When people can acknowledge their regrets, extract lessons from them, and use those lessons to make better choices going forward, regret becomes a positive force in mental health. But when people get stuck in cycles of self-blame, when they repeatedly replay past events without moving toward resolution or learning, or when they use regret as evidence of their fundamental inadequacy, regret becomes destructive to mental well-being. Research shows that people with depression tend to have more regrets and to process those regrets less effectively. They're more likely to engage in counterfactual thinking that focuses on how much better things could have been, and they're less likely to extract constructive lessons from their regrets. That learning healthy regret processing skills isn't just about making better decisions. It's also about protecting and improving mental health. The three strategies we discussed earlier, self-disclosure, self-compassion, and self-distance, are essentially emotional regulation skills that can benefit overall psychological well-being. Chapter 6. Practical applications for daily life, personal development, and self-improvement. Understanding the 4 core regrets provides a powerful framework for personal development. Instead of trying to improve everything at once, you can focus your efforts on the areas most likely to prevent future regrets while addressing patterns from past regrets. Start with a personal regret audit. Take some time to reflect on your major regrets and categorize them into the 4 types. Are most of your regrets about foundation issues? Times when you weren't disciplined or responsible enough? Are they about boldness? Chances you didn't take? Are they about moral compromises or connection failures? The pattern of your past regrets reveals your personal vulnerability areas. If most of your regrets are foundation regrets, you need to focus on building better systems, habits, and disciplines in your life. This might mean creating better financial habits, establishing exercise routines, or committing to ongoing learning and skill development. If your regrets cluster around boldness, you need to practice taking more calculated risks. This doesn't mean being reckless, but it does mean pushing yourself outside your comfort zone more regularly. Set goals that require you to stretch. Apply for opportunities that feel slightly beyond your current abilities, or commit to experiences that involve some uncertainty but significant potential for growth. If you have many moral regrets, focus on clarifying your values and building systems that help you act in accordance with those values, even when it's difficult. This might involve setting boundaries, practicing difficult conversations, or finding ways to align your daily choices more closely with your deeper principles. If connection regrets dominate your list, prioritize relationship building and maintenance. Reach out to old friends, plan regular time with family, practice vulnerability and emotional expression, and work on conflict resolution skills. Create a monthly review process where you examine recent decisions through the lens of potential future regrets. Ask yourself, what did I do this month that I might regret? What opportunities did I miss? How well did I balance foundation building with reasonable risk-taking? Did I act in accordance with my values? Did I invest in my relationships? This kind of regular reflection helps you course correct quickly, rather than waiting years to realize you've been making choices that don't align with your long-term values and goals. Career and professional applications. The regret framework is particularly useful for career decisions because professional choices often involve complex trade-offs between security and opportunity, between present comfort and future growth, between individual advancement and relationships with colleagues. For career foundation building, focus on developing skills that will serve you throughout your professional life, regardless of how your industry changes. This includes both technical skills relevant to your field and meta skills like communication, problem solving, and learning how to learn. Foundation career regrets often stem from failing to invest in ongoing professional development or from not taking the long-term view of career building. Many professionals regret not taking their early career years seriously enough, treating entry-level positions as temporary rather than as opportunities to build crucial skills and relationships. Others regret not staying current with industry changes or not developing leadership capabilities when they had the chance. For career boldness, consider what calculated risks might accelerate your professional growth. This might mean applying for positions that seem slightly beyond your current qualifications, starting a side business, changing industries, or taking on high-visibility projects that could either advance your career significantly or provide valuable learning experiences even if they don't succeed. Career boldness regrets often involve not advocating for yourself strongly enough, not negotiating for better opportunities, or not leaving situations that weren't serving your long-term interests. Many people stay in comfortable but dead-end positions too long, prioritizing short-term security over long-term growth. Moral regrets typically involve compromising your professional integrity for advancement, staying silent about unethical practices, or treating colleagues poorly in pursuit of success. These regrets tend to be particularly painful because they affect not just your career outcomes, but your sense of professional identity. To avoid career moral regrets, clarify your professional values and non-negotiables. What behaviors will you not engage in, regardless of the potential benefits? What practices will you speak up about, even if it's uncomfortable? Having clear ethical boundaries before you're tested makes it easier to maintain your integrity under pressure. Career connection regrets often involve not investing enough in professional relationships, burning bridges unnecessarily, or failing to mentor others when you had the opportunity. Your professional network isn't just about what others can do for you. It's about building genuine relationships that create mutual value over time. Make it a practice to regularly reach out to former colleagues, to offer help to others in your industry, and to maintain relationships even when there's no immediate professional benefit. Many career opportunities come through relationships, and some of the most meaningful aspects of professional life involve the connections you make along the way. Relationship and family applications. Connection regrets are the most common type of regret, which means that applying regret wisdom to your relationships might have the highest payoff in terms of life satisfaction and meaning. The key insight from regret research is that we systematically underestimate how much other people want to hear from us and how much they value our efforts to maintain connection. For family relationships, the most common regrets involve not spending enough time with aging parents, not resolving conflicts before it's too late, and not expressing love and appreciation clearly enough. These regrets suggest several practical applications. First, prioritize time with family members while you have it. This doesn't mean you have to spend every moment with family, but it does mean being intentional about creating meaningful connections regularly. Schedule regular calls with distant family members. Plan visits that focus on quality time rather than just obligation, and create traditions that bring people together. Second, address conflicts directly rather than letting them fester. Many connection regrets stem from pride, stubbornness, or the assumption that someone else should make the first move toward reconciliation. Research shows that most people want to resolve conflicts, but are afraid the other person doesn't want to reconcile. Don't let pride create permanent distance from people you care about. Third, express appreciation and love explicitly. Many people assume their family members know how they feel, but connection regrets often involve things left unsaid. Make it a habit to tell people what they mean to you, to acknowledge their contributions to your life, and to express gratitude for their presence in your world. For friendships, common regrets involve losing touch with important people, not being present during significant moments in friends' lives, and not maintaining friendships through life transitions. Friendships often require more intentional effort than family relationships because there are fewer external structures forcing connection. Make friendship maintenance a priority by scheduling regular contact with important friends, remembering and acknowledging significant events in their lives, and being willing to travel or make effort to maintain connections even when geography or life circumstances make it challenging. For romantic relationships, regrets often involve not fighting for relationships that mattered, not expressing feelings when you had the chance, or not apologizing for mistakes that damaged important connections. The lesson is to be brave in love, to express your feelings, to work through conflicts, and to prioritize the relationships that bring meaning to your life. In all relationships, remember that small gestures of connection often matter more than grand gestures. A simple text message, a phone call on an important day, or showing up when someone needs support can prevent years of regret about missed opportunities for connection. Health and lifestyle applications. Health regrets are a major subcategory of foundation regrets, and they become more prominent as people age and face the consequences of years of lifestyle choices. The good news about health regrets is that in many cases, it's never too late to start making better choices, even if you can't completely undo past damage. Health regrets typically center around not exercising enough, not eating well, smoking, drinking too much, or not addressing health problems when they were more manageable. These regrets point toward the importance of treating your body as a long-term investment, rather than focusing only on immediate comfort or convenience. If you have health regrets from the past, use them as motivation to start making better choices now. You can't change what you did to your body in your 20s or 30s, but you can change how you treat it from today forward. Start with small, sustainable changes, rather than dramatic overhauls that are hard to maintain. Mental health regrets often involve not addressing stress, anxiety, or depression when symptoms first appeared, not developing healthy coping mechanisms, or not seeking help when you needed it. Mental health, like physical health, benefits from early intervention and ongoing maintenance. If you've neglected your mental health in the past, use that regret as motivation to prioritize emotional well-being going forward. This might mean developing stress management techniques, building better social support systems, or working with a therapist to address patterns that aren't serving you well. Sleep regrets are increasingly common as research reveals how crucial sleep is for physical health, mental health, and cognitive performance. Many people regret years of sleep deprivation, whether due to work demands, social activities, or simply not recognizing sleep's importance. The lesson from health regrets is that your body and mind are the foundation for everything else in your life. Investing in your health isn't selfish. It's necessary for being able to show up fully for your work, your relationships, and your goals. Prevention and maintenance are almost always easier and more effective than trying to reverse damage after it's already occurred. The transformative power of regret. As we reach the end of our journey through the power of regret, it's worth reflecting on how radically different this perspective is from the conventional wisdom about regret. We've been taught to avoid regret, to suppress it, to focus only on moving forward without looking back. But Daniel Pink's research reveals that this approach robs us of one of our most powerful tools for growth and wisdom. Regret isn't the enemy of a well-lived life. It's evidence that we care about living well. When we feel regret, It means we have standards for ourselves, values that matter to us, and the ability to imagine better choices. These are strengths, not weaknesses. The 4 core regrets: foundation, boldness, moral, and connection provide a roadmap for human flourishing. They tell us that a good life requires building a stable foundation while also being willing to take sensible risks. It requires living in accordance with our values while also prioritizing our connections with others. These aren't contradictory demands, but complementary aspects of a life well lived. The practical wisdom of looking backward. What makes this book so valuable is that it doesn't just help us understand regret intellectually. It gives us practical tools for using regret to make better decisions and live more intentionally. The 3 strategies of self-disclosure, self-compassion, and self-distance provide concrete ways to process regret healthily. The regret optimization framework gives us a method for making decisions that we're less likely to regret later. Perhaps most importantly, this research reminds us that we're not alone in our regrets. Every human being experiences regret, and most of our regrets fall into predictable patterns. This universality of regret is actually comforting. It means that the painful emotions we feel when reflecting on our past mistakes are not evidence that we're uniquely flawed, but proof that we're fundamentally human. Moving forward with regret as an ally. The goal isn't to eliminate regret from your life. That would be impossible and undesirable. Instead, the goal is to develop a healthier relationship with regret, one that allows you to learn from the past without being imprisoned by it, to acknowledge your mistakes without being destroyed by them, and to use your regrets as teachers rather than tormentors. Start today by taking inventory of your own regrets. Which of the 4 categories do most of them fall into? What patterns do you see? What lessons are your regrets trying to teach you? How can you use this wisdom to make better choices going forward? Remember that regret well handled becomes wisdom. Every regret you've experienced has the potential to help you make better decisions, build stronger relationships, and live more authentically. The pain of regret is the price we pay for the possibility of growth. And when we're willing to pay that price, regret becomes not a burden, but a gift. Your regrets are not your enemies. They are your teachers. Listen to what they're trying to tell you. Learn from their lessons, and use their wisdom to create the life you truly want. Looking backward, when done with intention and skill, is one of the most powerful ways to move forward. Thank you for joining me in exploring the power of regret. If this video has changed how you think about your past mistakes and future choices, please like, share, and subscribe for more insights from life-changing books. Remember, the power of regret lies not in the looking back, but in the wisdom gained for moving forward.